Viruses like influenza and COVID-19 are expert commuters. They are built to hop efficiently from person to person, catching a ride on a cough or a sneeze, through crowded trains, busy offices, and shared air. Hantavirus rides a completely different transit system. It travels on a closed parallel network built exclusively for wild rodents. The passengers on this network are animals like deer mice and voles. They carry the virus in their bodies their entire lives, but it never actually makes them sick. For the mice, it is completely harmless. But wherever these mice go, they leave the virus behind. They shed it constantly in their droppings, their urine, and their saliva, scattering it across the dusty floors of barns, garages, and woodland trails. Which is why recent global headlines have been so confusing. Suddenly, a virus adapted to quietly ride along with mice is infecting human tourists aboard a luxury cruise ship. Dozens of passengers on the MV Hantavirus fell seriously ill after a South American voyage, and tragically, several people died. Health agencies worldwide had to scramble to track down everyone who had been on board. How does a pathogen meant for a woodland mouse end up killing humans at sea? Its specific transit rules dictate exactly how it moves, and those same rigid biological limits are what keep a localized shipboard outbreak from spilling over into a global health crisis. To understand how humans enter the picture, we have to look at the environment. The trouble usually starts in an enclosed, poorly ventilated space, like a shed or a cabin, where rodent waste has been left to dry out over time. When you disturb that dried waste by sweeping a floor or even just walking heavily, you launch those microscopic particles into the air. In science, this is called aerosolization. Think of it as kicking up toxic dust. If you inhale it, the virus boards a human host, traveling deep into your respiratory system and latching on to the delicate inner lining of your lungs. You won't know it happened right away. The virus hides quietly for anywhere from 1 to 8 weeks. When you finally do feel sick, it disguises itself perfectly as the seasonal flu, bringing a fever, chills, and aching muscles. But days later, the infection attacks the blood vessels. The lungs begin to rapidly leak and fill with fluid. Patients develop a severe cough, struggle to breathe, and often require mechanical ventilators in hospital intensive care units just to survive. Because the human body reacts so intensely, the virus gets trapped deep inside our organs. It cannot escape back into the air to infect anyone else. You can catch it from a mouse, but you cannot pass it to your family. Inside a human, the virus hits a biological dead end. For nearly every single strain of hantavirus discovered around the globe, that rule holds true. The virus stops with the person who breathed it in. But there is exactly one exception. It is known as the Andes strain, and it is the specific variant responsible for the crisis on the MV Hantavirus. The Andes strain originates in specific parts of South America. This is precisely where the cruise ship passengers had been exploring on land before they brought the virus back on board. This strain found a loophole. It is the only hantavirus capable of jumping from person to person. However, it cannot float freely across a room like the flu. It requires prolonged, overlapping physical space. A cruise ship provides exactly that. Restricted living conditions, shared cabins, and tight dining areas force the sustained closeness this virus needs to spread. To stop it, authorities initiated a massive medical evacuation. Passengers were escorted onto dedicated repatriation flights, kept completely segregated from the public, and placed into a mandatory 45-day isolation period upon landing. At the same time, international health agencies launched a sweeping contact tracing effort, tracking down anyone who sat near an infected passenger in order to build a secure firewall around the exposed group. This extreme lockdown is a precaution. It is not because the virus threatens to sweep easily through grocery stores or schools, but to ensure this single, rule-breaking strain never gets the chance to establish a permanent foothold in the general human population. Whenever a rare virus makes the news, panic and rumors follow close behind. But the hard science shows that hantavirus spreads very differently from highly contagious respiratory diseases. It simply does not have the tools to trigger a global airborne pandemic. Your risk of catching this on a bus or a plane is virtually zero. Instead, the real danger exists much closer to home. For the general public, the threat comes entirely from accidental exposure in your own environment. We are talking about neglected spaces where wild mice might nest, like a dusty garage, an old shed, or a woodland cabin that has been closed up for the winter. If you find mouse droppings in those spaces, the worst mistake you can make is grabbing a broom. Dry sweeping instantly kicks that settled dust, and any virus trapped inside it, straight into the air you breathe. The safe approach is simple. Open the doors and windows to air the space out for at least 30 minutes. Put on heavy gloves and a mask. Then thoroughly soak the area with a mix of water and bleach to trap the dust before you wipe it up with paper towels. Understanding how this virus travels takes the mystery out of the risk. We can respect the danger while treating a headline-grabbing threat as a